Hey guys, so I'm sure you've seen Harbor gameplay just about everywhere at this point, but in this video I wanted to go over his abilities, what maps I think he might be good on, and go over some streamer and YouTuber gameplay to get a better look at what the abilities can actually do. Unfortunately, I don't have access to Harbor right now because my clout level is just not that high yet, so gotta work with what I got. All right, let's jump into it. So first I'll read the descriptions of each of his abilities, and then we'll go right into some gameplay and see exactly how he works. So here's the description of his first ability and his signature ability, High Tide. High Tide is a wall of water. You fire to send the water forward along the ground. You hold fire, similar to Phoenix or Sky, to guide the water in the direction of your crosshair. Passing through the world, meaning it goes through walls, and it spawns a wall of water along its path. You can hit alt fire while bending to stop the water early, and players that are hit by it are slowed. The three main abilities that he has work in the same way, where if you walk through the water, it'll actually slow you for about a second or so. So regardless if it's High Tide, Cove, or Cascade, it'll slow you if you pass through the water. So I like to compare it to Viper's Wall because it works in a very similar manner. You can kind of think of it as like a Phoenix wall and control it like a Skybird. Just be aware that your teammates are also slowed by it, so it's not like a Viper wall where your teammates are unaffected by the decay. They will get slowed for about a second no matter who passes through it. So one of the really good examples I've seen the wall be used is to get onto sites like A on Pearl. If we take a look at this clip from How To Noodle, we can see just how it's used to get onto A site. If you take a look at the minimap, you'll see the line go down and then he curves it to the right, blocking off all those areas. Here's another pretty good way that I've seen the wall used, and it's almost similar to like a Astra wall to block anyone that's like right on the other side of the spike. So take a look at this. Sends it in and blocks off anyone from that side of the site. And then you can kind of get close to the wall similar to Astra. And if anyone peeks it, they'll slow and then you can kill him. Unfortunately, he dies there, but wins the round anyway. So the next ability we have here is Cove. Cove is a sphere of shielding water. Fire to throw, alt fire to underhand throw. Upon impacting the ground, spawn a water shield that blocks bullets. So think of this basically as a combination between the size of Viper's Orb, the inside of Omen's smoke, and covered by an outer layer of shield. Now, the shield isn't permanent, by the way. It can be destroyed, and it takes around 13 bullets with a Vandal to kill. And I don't know about a Phantom, but I bet it's about something similar to that. So there are some pretty interesting ways to use Cove, and we can take a look at that through some of the clips that I've seen streamers use it. So some of the ways that you can use Cove are for diffusing, planting, or protecting your teammates when they're planting or defusing the spike. There are some other clips that I've seen where people will actually use it to get into sight by putting it close to the choke point and then using it as kind of like this, I guess, destructible cover. So in the same clip from before where How To Noodle uses the wall, in the same clip he uses the Cove to actually get into sight with his teammates after getting a pick. So he throws down the wall, uses it to get through the smoke and onto sight. And now they get into sight a little bit more safely. And now it's basically a smoke with a little extra juice on it, a little extra shield. Here's another clip that we can see from Kaide as she gets onto B site in Pearl and is able to plant the spike. It's a little bit more risky, but it can work if your teammates work with you. Uses the wall to help herself get in there. There's a lot going on. And manages to get out a little bit safely as her team moves into sight. So that's another way that you can use it. All right, so moving on to the third ability, Cascade. So Cascade is a wave of water. Fire to send the wave rolling forward and through walls. Reuse to stop the wave from moving further, and players hit are slowed. So this ability can be used to block off choke points. It's a wall that you can basically send out a certain distance before it stops, or you can stop it short depending on where you need it. You could put it in choke points and basically use it as a way to slow enemies from pushing onto sight, similar to the long wall. So here's an example of Asuna demonstrating that we can see. So the wall kind of moves out forward, goes about, it looks like 25 meters, and stops. And you can also stop it short, just like there. There you go. Should have just let him explain it. So there are about 3 different ways that I can see this wall being used. One way is to delay attackers by using it as a smoke. You could send it into sight to use it as a way to block off a choke point, and then you can also use it as mobile cover to move with into sight or into advantageous positions. So here's another clip I actually really like from How To Noodle, who demonstrates how to use it aggressively on a defensive round to gain some map control in mid on Pearl. So as you can see right off the bat, he throws it right into mid where the attackers could peek. Here's another good example of Flex Ninja using it for himself to get onto C site a little bit more safely. Gets a quick pick and a couple nice picks in garage, and then uses it to push into C, blocking off CT. And now he has control of sight. I could also see this being used for like a post plant situation. If you don't have your Cove, you can actually just throw it kind of right in front of you and use it as kind of like a blind against the other team. Obviously, you don't get as much protection, but at least it's something to block your vision from the enemy. And finally, we have Reckoning, which is Harbor's ult. For Reckoning, you want to fire to summon a geyser pool on the ground. Enemy players in the area are targeted by successive geyser strikes. Players caught within a strike are concussed. So it's basically this big radius kind of circular AoE that if you are standing in it, it'll attempt to concuss you. It'll essentially know where you are in the pool. I believe it's about the same radius as an Astro Concuss. So think of it that way. The only difference is that if you're remaining in the pool for the duration of the ult, it'll stun up to 3 times. So you can move out of the ult and then it won't concuss you. But if you stay in the ult, it'll keep trying to concuss you up to 3 times. Another interesting thing about the concuss ability is that you can actually see it from a really high distance. So if someone's behind cover on a site and they get concussed by your ult, you can actually see the animation come from the sky, basically. It's pretty high up there. You can also hear the concuss happen. So you can use that as a way to tell if anyone's inside of your ult that's on site and behind cover that you wouldn't normally be able to see or hear. The other thing I should mention about the ult is that it shrinks over time and gets smaller and smaller. So it kind of allows your opponent to get out of the ult if they need to, but it doesn't shrink small enough where it's unusable. So here's a great example of how the ult actually works, except this is going to be against Flex Ninja and shows just how hard it is to get away from the concusses if you're trapped on site and can't really go anywhere. So here you'll see the first concuss. He stands at a wall. There's another concuss. And then a third concuss comes in. Fortunately, an enemy throws down a Cove in front of him. He throws down his own Cove, moves through it, and now he can actually come out of it and get a pick on site. So he actually used his Cove really well there to get out of some dangerous situation. Unfortunately, his enemy helped him as well. So here's a look at Asuna actually demonstrating the ult, and you can kind of see how big the radius actually is. It's pretty massive. So you can see that the pool kind of goes down on the ground, has a visual effect. And now you can see everyone getting concussed. Interesting though is you can see the radius kind of moving in there. I'll go back to that again. So if you look at the edge of the radius, it kind of shrinks in, right? And some people even outside of the zone will get concussed if they were in the zone before the radius kind of moved past them. So even if you're not directly inside of the ult, it can still concuss you. Seems like there's a lot of really good combos that can come from this ult. All right, so now I want to go over some of the maps that I think Harbor could potentially be pretty good on. To be honest, I think it's mostly going to be the same maps as Viper. So maps like Breeze, Icebox, and Fracture is kind of where I think he'll do better on. And the reason for this is that, you know, he has essentially the same wall as Viper, so those long open areas can be pretty easily covered. And the fact that you can control his wall makes it seem that, you know, the wall is pretty powerful at taking those long lanes and can kind of cover areas that you wouldn't normally be able to cover with other controllers, even Viper, which is what I want to take a look at right now. So let's head to Icebox first, so I can kind of give you an idea of what his abilities might look like on this map. So here's where I kind of want to demonstrate where Harbor can actually maybe come in handy, as opposed to using a Sage on B side every time. So normally you would see Sage kind of come over here, maybe use her wall like this, and then come into this corner and then plant the spike. Probably one of the most safe ways to plant the spike on this area, other than using just a Viper wall. So I'm actually going to use Omen for an example here, because I think his smoke is the most similar to what Harbor's will look like inside, at least. So let's say you're Harbor and you kind of have a wall coming across here, similar to the Viper wall, and you want to plant right in this spot. So one of the ways I think you can do that is by throwing that Cove ability, you know, basically, you know, kind of like right here, maybe. So you come in and now you're kind of shielded. So, you know, just pretend this is Harbor gameplay. Okay, just pretend. So you come into the thing and, you know, it stays up for about, I think it's around 10 seconds, 8 seconds. I don't really know exactly what the time is, but you kind of throw your ball down here and then get the plant off. If any enemies try to shoot you, it'll, you know, take a few, you know, to get through. And then hopefully, you know, you have a teammate come in here with you and maybe like watch for enemies that come through the smoke. You get the plant down and then, you know, you come back and play post plant. And at this point, if you have a sage, you could even put a wall elsewhere if you want. You know, maybe you could put a wall up in here on heaven. You know, maybe put a wall kind of like right here across, so you block off snowman and, you know, behind the bridge here. So you could really, you know, save Sage's wall for something a little bit more useful instead of just planting the bomb. So that's pretty cool. All right, so now I want to take a look at Fracture, because I think there's some really good spots here that Harbor can utilize his long wall on. So we'll use Viper for an example, just to get an idea of what his wall could look like. All right, so let's say, for example, that we're going to hit A site and pretend that I'm not Viper and I'm Harbor. So something that you could possibly do is maybe, you know, come along here, or maybe even, you know, maybe even start back here if you really wanted to. The wall obviously doesn't last as long, so you probably want to be kind of close to, you know, where the wall is going to come into play as quick as possible. So let's say that you want to smoke off ropes here. So now there's this kind of this new catwalk here if you are unfamiliar with the Fracture changes. So instead of just smoking here, you kind of have to smoke catwalk as well now. So this is where I think Harbor can actually really shine. So if we come back in here, take the wall, and, you know, for example, this is maybe what a Viper wall might look like on this. So a wall goes up, you know, maybe you come through the door. Now all this is blocked off and you can kind of head to site this way. The difference here between Viper's wall and Harbor's wall is that this wall is, you know, can only go one way, right? It can only go straight. So instead of just going across here, once you get to this point, or even, you know, a little before if you want to, like kind of right here, you essentially cut off the wall and start curving it towards this way. And now you can even, you know, block off this area. So now, you know, pretend this is part of the wall. So now you have all of this covered. You know, move through ropes, and you can even cover some of this area here. So I think that's probably going to be a really good way of using his wall. Now that I'm thinking about it now, you can have the wall go that way. And then maybe if you're, you know, if you're coming through ropes this way, you can throw your tall wall ability and kind of, you know, push it right here. So it's pretty high up there too. So it'll definitely block this whole entire area if you line it up correctly. So you could, you know, with Harbor, you could really block off almost basically every angle to get into A site, which I don't believe most controllers can do, other than Viper maybe. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Sorry I didn't have actual Harbor gameplay, but that will be coming very soon, hopefully as soon as next week. I plan on doing a bunch of guides for this agent, so definitely stay tuned for that. Like the video to help out the channel if you enjoyed yourself. Subscribe for more guides like this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.